and welcome back to Kitchen Table Talks COVID Conversations, a series of conversations with experts in the community where we discuss different ways that families are navigating the pandemic. Today we're here with Dan Ozemick from Walsh Duffield. He's going to discuss financial decisions in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis. Dan focuses on retirement plans, employee education, and financial wellness at Walsh Duffield. And today we're really going to focus on families that have been significantly impacted financially by COVID-19. So Dan, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks for having me, and thanks to Epic for allowing me to speak today about what we feel are very important topics.
It is absolutely. And I think, first of all, there's such a shock component to this still for so many families. A lot of us out there have never dealt with such a swift and uncontrollable change in finances before. So first and foremost, what do these parents need to remember?
I think first and foremost, you have to remember none of this is your fault to begin with, and internally when we look inside, this is a challenge we're all faced with together, and we all have the power to overcome this adversity. And we feel strongly that this is a challenge that can be won, just like other challenges this country has faced in the past. So the first step, remembering, it's not your fault, and it's certainly not your kids' fault. Our kids look to us for guidance in both good times and bad times, and they learn based on how we respond to certain situations that come out of life, especially in some much more challenging times. So it's always important to remember, keep that level head and focus on the things in your life that you have control over.
Exactly. So parents really may be feeling a lack of control over this situation. So what are some ways that they can resume that sense of responsibility and control over their finances?
First and foremost, if you haven't done so already, the absolute first step is to apply for unemployment benefits if you have been laid off due to the COVID crisis. You do have to apply through New York State first before you can be eligible for any federal benefits as well. This will allow you to at least be able to take the first step in determining what your steady income will be while you're not working through this COVID crisis. The next step is you have to understand the other side of the equation, which is your expenses. So a budget is imperative, especially in these challenging times. You really have to know where you stand today before you can go forward into the future. So really, when you build that budget out, you have to start with, the expenses that you can't live without. You have to pay your rent, your utilities, and your food to feed your family. So after those vital expenses, if you don't have enough income to cover those, we are a belief that, it's good to be honest with yourself, but also honest with others that, you owe your expenses to. So keeping an open line of communication, being as transparent as possible about the situation. There's a great deal of empathy out there in the world today. So I think the best approach is always the honest approach about your situation. Also for other bills outside of, your basic vital expenses, focusing on getting in contact with your bill providers through their customer service lines and so forth is also imperative as well. I know a lot of others have offered email as a way to contact them to help work through the situation. So if you don't have access to email, try looking at the hours that that specific bill provider is open for, because they may have alternative hours to allow you to contact them, at days or times during the day that you would not otherwise have available to you.
Awesome. Now, are there other unemployment resources out there that parents should be utilizing?
As far as community resources that are available, consider calling 211 to learn what else is available out there. It's open 24/7, and the referral services are completely confidential. There are other resources also available that you may or may not be eligible for, one being temporary assistance for needy families, another being HEAP, or Home Energy Assistance Program. You also have SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and then WIC for women, infants, and children for supplemental nutrition as well. Now, beyond that, also looking at yourself, determining, beyond the basic needs in life, what can I do potentially to enhance my current job skills? So the Buffalo Employment Training Center is a great starting point for training, education, and job search assistance as well.
Great. And now, For parents that may now be presented with the opportunity to go back to work as New York State starts phase 1 and is going to start to really reopen, they're getting presented with that opportunity to go back either through the payroll protection plan or with their business just reopening. So as they examine their income from currently maybe being on unemployment with the possibility of going back to work, what are things that they need to consider?
Before you even begin examining your income, I would say examining the health and well-being of your family is the first priority, and that includes childcare. In the event that, with schools being closed at least until the fall, childcare is certainly becoming a challenge. So that certainly would be a main driver of determining if you're able to go back to work. Outside of that, with your workplace, there'll likely be new safety standards put into place. So it's ultimately up to you to ensure that those safety standards are compliant with new social distancing guidelines and so forth. And then you also have to consider other pros and cons of remaining unemployed. With unemployment, right now with the federal enhanced unemployment benefit, you actually may be making a bit more money than you were while working. So the question then becomes, remembering the fact that these unemployment benefits will expire. And, in our view, long-term job security is more important than making a few extra dollars off of unemployment. So you don't want to miss out on that window of opportunity of being able to return to work if you're able to do so once all those family matters are squared away. Also remember, when you're on unemployment, you're also not eligible for other benefits potentially, such as health, dental, accruing vacation time, or even an employer contribution to your retirement account. So also you have to look at not just what you're making from a hourly rate, but also what you're making on an employee benefit compensation package as well, and adding all those items together. Because right now in a health crisis, I would say having health insurance is a very essential expense that you want to make sure you have covered.
Definitely. And in times like this, it can be so hard to really think long-term like that. So that's really, really good advice. Yeah. And now circling back to where families stand today. So budgets and finances have likely looked really different for families for a while now. And that doesn't mean that kids understand yet what is really going on. So since we know that children really feed off of our emotions, and knowing that if we appear anxious or even overshare about finances with our kids, that can really spiral for them. So what are some ways that we can communicate what's happening financially with our children without maybe sparking that fear in them?
Well, I would say honestly, before this crisis even began, I was always an advocate for keeping our kids in the loop and understanding how finances work. Because these are skills that they're going to need one day as they grow into adults and so forth. You don't have to get into the nitty-gritty details of what each expense is and why it needs to be paid, but at least keeping them in the loop, understanding that might have to tighten the belt a little bit for the short term, but also reminding them again, it's not their fault. This isn't a crisis that they created. It's just a temporary setback that we'll have to work through. Just as we mentioned before, it's a challenge that can be overcome. So we'll get through this together. Another, side story, I'd like to share a bit on the personal side. I had the opportunity, I used to think it was a curse when I was a kid, but I've learned it's a blessing that my great-grandmother, who lived through the Great Depression, watched me quite a bit over the summertime, and needless to say, she was one tough cookie. So with that, she also was very frugal growing up through the Great Depression, and then also raising 4 boys and my aunt as well, basically alone while her husband was at work 60 hours a week. So learning the virtues of not wasting food, being very frugal with your expenses, understanding that wasting food in a lot of ways is the same as wasting money. And these, messages and spirit live with me to this very day. And I think it's a very important message to share with young ones that didn't have the opportunity to maybe learn from such a great generation that endured such a challenging time in our history.
That's such a great way to look at it. Well, thank you so much, Dan. Really valuable advice for so many families. And for everyone watching, a full recap of our conversation with Dan from Walsh Duffield will be on our website, epicforchildren.org. And be sure to tune in to our next COVID conversation, where we talk about families that maybe haven't been impacted as significantly in a financial sense and ways that you can give back during this time. Dan, thank you so much again.
Thanks, Liz, and thanks everyone for watching. I appreciate it.